All right, good Monday afternoon, everybody, and welcome to House Agriculture, Chesapeake and Natural Resources, Chesapeake Subcommittee. Clerk, if you can open the roll for attendance. And if we can count Delegate Krizik as being here.
Trying to even the numbers.
Okay. All right, let the record show that Delegate Krizik is indeed at the meeting. Clerk, you can close the roll. And we have a quorum present. All right, I think we have 7 bills before the subcommittee today. A number of them are from members who are on the subcommittee, and so we will hear non-subcommittee members' bills first. I do see Delegate Orrock, if you want to come up and present on House Bill 220. And if I understand correctly, you might have a substitute?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. If the subcommittee would consider a substitute, language has been worked out between the water facility operators, the department, and local government. So we have a substitute.
Do I have a motion to accept the substitute?
Move to substitute.
It's properly moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, substitutes before us. Delegate Orrock.
And, Mr. Chairman, I'll give a Cliff Notes version, and then Chris Pomeroy will come and fill in any missing pieces on that. But I was asked to carry this piece of legislation by the water facility operator group because there's such a shortage of providers and licensure becomes a factor. Local governments are having problems keeping all of these positions filled, and we still need to make sure that we're maintaining the proper water quality. And towards that end, this legislation tries to bring a balance to all of those issues involving new technologies that are available to help in monitoring things of that nature. So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'll defer to Chris Pomeroy to give a better, more comprehensive explanation if you wish, or definitely answer any questions.
Very good. Does anybody have questions for Delegate Orrock before we turn things over to Mr. Pomeroy? All right, Mr. Pomeroy.
I thought you were on my left. It's all good.
Mr. Chairman, members, Chris Pomeroy. I represent the Virginia Municipal Drinking Water Association and the Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies, the 2 types of utilities, water and wastewater, that are covered by the bill here and subject to the regulatory oversight of the Virginia Department of Health and DEQ, respectively. The purpose of the bill, as Delegate Orrock was saying, is to address some challenges related to staffing type issues. There are 2 main aspects of the bill. First, dealing with unexpected vacancies in the position of the highest required operator, licensed operator at the facility. Typically there'd be multiple operators, but there's a class system in those licenses, either 4 levels or 6 levels, depending on the type of facility. And one challenge that's been experienced in the field with our water and wastewater plants is the situation of an unexpected vacancy in the position of the highest operator class. And they're the best practices, and what the bill does is essentially codify best practices, which is to communicate early and often with the regulatory agency and then go about diligently hiring to replace that position. We also have activities such as trying to promote through the DPOR testing program to hire operating classes, the existing lower ranked operators already within the system, but to fill that vacancy as expeditiously as possible. What the bill does in that category is codify these best practices about prompt notice, having a hiring plan, diligently executing your hiring plan. So for a utility that complies with all of those steps, what the bill does is give them a temporary waiver from the regulatory component of that highest operator license class. Essentially, it trues up the best practice and all the utility can do in that situation and avoid incurring noncompliance, which is enforceable by EPA or by any citizens or by the state agencies. Essentially, those practices are the current steps that the agencies expect when this unexpected vacancy situation arises, such as due to a death or extended illness or a firing for cause. The second piece of the bill is what I'll call the technology modernization piece. The facilities have attendance hours where that operator who has the highest required license is required to monitor the facility for a certain number of hours each day. Those numbers of hours vary with the size and complexity of the facility. And what the bill does is attempt to also provide some incremental ability to meet our staffing challenges by taking advantage of remote monitoring technologies. I mean, basically things have advanced over the years such that your lead operator can go home with the dashboard for the waterworks on his iPad and can see the exact same information from home that he could sitting at a desk at the water plant. So this lets us have, particularly in staffing shortages, have eyes on the facility remotely. So those are the two main elements of the bill. I would add a couple features that apply to each. The main thing is that both elements of the bill preserve VDH and DEQ discretion. Either of those provisions can be revoked by the department, the relevant department in its discretion if they thought there were need. And in fact, on the technology piece I was just discussing, it's incumbent upon the facility owner to come forward with a proposed plan for that remote monitoring. And the approval of that plan is also at the agency's discretion. So what you have here is a framework that allows the agencies to provide some adjustment for the staffing of these facilities that both the operator and the agency agree are appropriate for a given facility. And the agencies retain the ability to take away that which they have granted if they feel there's ever a need to do so. So, Mr. Chairman, that's the summary of the bill. I'd be more than happy, of course, to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Pomeroy. Any members of the subcommittee have questions of either the patron or Mr. Pomeroy?
Mr. Chair.
Delegate Weber.
Thank you. All right, so in English for me. Basically what the first part of the bill does is it establishes a waiver so that is that facility out of compliance if that top position is open? And that's what this waiver is for, to give them the ability to continue to operate and make sure that they get that little bit of waiver until they get that position filled?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Weber, yes. The default scenario under current law is the facility's automatically in non-compliance as soon as the vacancy occurs, so it's a bit of an unfair procedure. And what this does is provide a framework that if the facility owner is acting appropriately to manage that situation and in good communication with the regulator, they're not going to accrue any non-compliance penalties.
Delegate Weber.
And then also, so in regards to the remote monitoring, basically the whole reason is to allow the ultimate operator to be able to go home and have dinner as opposed to being there for 12 hours, right? And so DEQ has full discrepancy on the type of monitoring system and all that. And are there any other states that allow this?
Yes, DEQ and VDH have full discretion to approve a plan that is proposed by the regulator. The plan must demonstrate that there's sufficient technology to do that which you just described. On this one, I've actually not surveyed the different states. It's been a trend in the industry. I just can't represent to you precisely the status of the different laws and regulations, but the whole industry has been moving in this direction for a number of years.
All right. Delegate Krizik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up on Delegate Webert's question, so on line 51, it says where the facility is equipped with adequate technological capability. How many meet that standard right now?
Mr. Chairman, Delegate Krizik, I don't know how many meet that standard right now. The standard itself is not defined in the statute. It's really dependent on a judgment call by the agency whether sufficient technology exists. So it's a situation where we do not have this flexibility today. We're basically putting ourselves as the owners of the facility, I'll say at the discretion of the agency to agree, if the agency so chooses, that there's adequate technology there. So it's a bit open-ended with the discretion in the agency's hand.
Delegate Krizik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Following up, So would adequate technology also include, and I think line 55, the management and how that management of the on-site employees would work? So obviously, if you're monitoring, that means things could go south, right? So if things go south, so to speak, what's the next step in, when you're remotely working? That's my concern. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And I guess, Mr. Pomeroy, kind of following up on that, maybe so we understand, it's not the facility is unstaffed, it's just that the person who has to be the lead operator can operate remotely, but there's people there who can react and respond if something does go haywire. But not to answer the question, but I think that's the...
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So as part of that plan review, that'd be one of the questions the agency would have control over in the process. I would say currently, many of these facilities have a two-tiered staffing arrangement where the operator of the highest class, which is what we're referring to here, might be required to be on site for, say, 12 hours. And then the other 12 hours don't require, or the other 4 hours, different size facilities have different number of hours, do not require that. So in some ways, we do this already. This adds a framework and makes it a bit more robust to allow a further degree of remote monitoring if the agency agrees it's appropriate at a given case.
Any further questions? All right, I guess I do, my question is with regard to DEQ and VDH. I believe you've coordinated with them on the technical aspects. I just want to make sure that both agencies feel very comfortable that this is a adequate framework and represents best practices, and I'm getting nods and thumbs ups, so I'll take that as a yes.
And Mr. Chairman, I would also say VACO is in support of the measure, and also I think you understand why I phoned a friend for the explanation of the bill and its technical aspects.
Very good. All right, Delegate Herring.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Maybe it's a point of order. We don't have the substitute before us, so.
It should be.
It's
on the.
Should be on LIS.
It's up on.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was an IHOD. Sorry. Can you then for us explain like the differences, and I'll pull it.
I want to phone a friend here again because it was worked out between him and the department.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, the key differences.
Line by line, of course.
So I'm just trying to recall the specific requests by the agencies. Number one, in the first section, the time frame for making notification to the agencies, language was added, and I don't have the substitute line numbers available to me. I apologize, just having that been posted. In accordance with the specific time frame directed by the department, that ensures that under current regulations, that's a maximum 24-hour notice, so that keeps a very tight timeline there. The revocation procedures that, like, for example, at the end of 172.1 paragraph A, the last sentence provides that the department may revoke the temporary waiver, essentially if they ever deem a public health threat due to any sort of violation. So that's a broad-based revocation authority for the department to take away what it giveth in the first place. In other words, you have to continue to earn the right to have this good actor type provision in your favor as you go. There is a provision at the end of paragraph B that provides essentially that the temporary waiver cannot be stacked with the remote monitoring. A remote monitor under the approved plan must be an operator of the highest class. Those are examples of a few of the key things that were requested by the agencies.
Thank you.
All right, any further questions? All right, is there anybody in the audience who wishes to speak for the bill? If you could introduce yourself and what organization you represent, if any.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, James Hutzler, Virginia Association of Counties. We definitely want to thank the delegate for bringing forward this bill, and VACO supports this bill.
Thank you. Anybody else? Anybody wish to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, hearing none, we come back to the committee. Any further questions or a motion?
Move to report.
All right, so that's moved to report the substitute and a proper seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by voting on the electronic voting board. Except for Delegate Krizik, he's not allowed to vote today. All right, if we can.
Delegate Krizik, how do you vote? Aye. Duly noted.
All right, so clerk will close the roll. I believe that gives us 6 yeas and 1 nay. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the subcommittee.
Thank you. Delegate Wiley, you're up next.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. HB 288 is in front of you, and let me explain. It requires a person who is obtaining a waterfowl blind license at the time of the transaction to provide a unique location of each stationary waterfowl blind that the Department of Wildlife Resources identifies standardized latitude and longitude coordinates using the decimal degrees format with a minimum of 5-digit precision. Basically, it needs to be updated by November 1st of each year. It has a delayed enactment beginning of January 1, 2025 in order to get this system set up with DWR. I do have an amendment that needs to be moved, if so much pleases the body.
Is it a substitute or an amendment?
It's excuse me, it's a substitute.
The substitute? Okay. Do we have a motion to adopt the substitute? Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, substitute is before us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill has no fiscal impact. Basically, this is a safety measure. What's happening is in the dark of the morning when these guys are getting set up for their related duck blinds, they're having conflict with who owns what and basically who has which duck blind, and they have loaded guns. So it's kind of a way to kind of mitigate the safety issue there. In future, it's basically you'll have it set up on your computer system, so guys on their phones possibly could locate where they need to go and who owns what. Certainly appreciate the guys working with DWR, the Shellfish Growers of America, Delta Waterfowl, Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation, and BMRC, and coming together and putting this together at the last minute. I have folks here that are willing to speak to it and answer any questions if there are some. Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody have any initial questions of the patron? And if you had a chance to take a look through the substitute. Delegate Krizik.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate, I had a few years ago a real concern back in my district because there was somebody put up a duck blind and it was in a no hunting subdivision, and it had been once upon a time when I was little. Of course, there was a lot of infill since then, but it used to be where duck blinds were and it wasn't any problem, but now there's lots of homes in that area. And so we had, and there was an issue where they were able to do it because of bow hunting. And that was still problematic because homes were only, 100 feet away. I just want to make sure that somehow this doesn't mess with what we've finally fixed. And I can't recall, and I apologize for not finding my old files, but in the move from the old General Assembly buildings, the 2 buildings now, I've lost that. But it's, I just don't want this thing to rear its ugly head back in my district because everybody was very concerned. Can maybe phone a friend or some of the folks maybe know what I'm talking about on the Little Hunting Creek area, but it was, and is bow hunting going to be a problem too? Thank you.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman. Ryan Brown, Director of the Department of Wildlife Resources. And I remember that specific fact pattern that was in the maybe ironically named Little Hunting Creek. Not anymore. Used to be Little Hunting Creek. The delegates bill here has no impact on areas that are available. As he mentioned, today's law requires that you give us latitude and longitude of your blind when you license it, but it doesn't specify a format. And so what we get in terms of records are many different data points. The bill would unify that into one standard, which I'm told matches up with what Google Maps gives you. So I understand that. I don't understand the technical language, but Google Maps I'm good on. Also, as he mentioned, would then authorize us to turn that into a map so that people could see where the blinds are. And The language and the substitute we learned about earlier today, certainly we'll continue talking with the delegate and the waterfowl interest along the way, assessing the impact of that, now. We've been working together over the last couple hours, so still probably some work to do on that, but I think everybody's committed to continuing to figure it out.
Yeah, if I could kind of follow up on that, because I guess that was my question. I had read the earlier lat long stuff, and that seemed to make sense to me. I think that the idea of ensuring that you're using that information to protect, shellfish and other grounds makes sense. But I guess the question is how many additional changes do you anticipate, and what's the nature of those changes to this particular bill?
Yeah, and to be clear, we have no position on the bill, so just in terms of technical information here. We have about 4,000 licensed blinds total in the Commonwealth, so that's the 100%. From what I understand from the shellfish folks and from VMRC, the question was when we saw the amendment was, well, how many areas are there that are subject to an oyster lease that could affect, a blind or needing to obtain permission before you place a blind there? And the answer is a pretty good amount of the waterway that the duck blinds exist within. That's the best I can give you right now. I've got my folks looking at, okay, how many of our blinds do we think fall there? But it seems to be a sizable number of them that would be impacted by that particular language. From our side of things, it would be a matter more of looking at, okay, how do we administer the program in light of that, and make sure that we check for permission before we go ahead and issue a license. I've got folks working on the answer to that question, and I'll share it with the delegate and anybody else who's interested as soon as I have it.
And I guess, Director Brown, if I could have a follow-up question, and this is kind of for the edification of the entire subcommittee. Are we creating a new right here with regard to overlapping duck blinds or duck blinds not being able to overlap with oyster grounds? Or is this basically the current law, and we are just having a mechanism that can more easily define or identify potential conflicts?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, nothing new. I would characterize today's world. You have two different bodies of law that, if you want to think of it this way, grant rights to bottomland. One is oyster leases, the other is duck blinds, so the ability to put a blind there. At current, there's no order of priority among them in the law, and so this doesn't come up very often, a handful of times over the years. But when somebody with a duck blind license shows up to build their blind and it's in an oyster lease, a discussion ensues among the parties, and the answer is who wins. And in today's world, they end up going to civil court if they care that much. I would tell you the 99% answer, a very high majority, is they work it out amongst themselves, and the duck blind doesn't go on top of where the oyster cages are going, and people sort it out on their own. But this legislation would clarify, I guess, if you want to look at it this way, that the oyster lease takes priority and that the duck blind owner would need their permission before licensing a blind there.
And one additional follow-up, and then I know we got one more question in the queue. You had said that you thought that you could do this administratively now without additional resources, but are you sure of that? And I'm just curious whether there needs to be an appropriation to make this work effectively.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at the effect of the substitute. The introduced bill just cleaned up our system, and no additional resources would be necessary. I don't mean to sound like I'm saying there will or won't be with the sub. It's if you think of it this way, most of what you do when you enter our Go Outdoors Virginia system to buy your license to hunt, fish, whatever else, which I highly encourage you to do, it's all user entry. It's what do you want to buy, where, if you need a certification for something, where's the number for that? You enter it in. The mechanics of verifying that you have permission to use a piece of property or a piece of bottomland in this case, versus our self-certification, or you certify that you're providing accurate information, and then if we find out you're wrong, we can do something about it later. If we are affirmatively on the front end needing to verify that you have permission, that may cause some additional work for staff, but I've got to talk to the folks who run that system before I can give you an accurate answer on that.
Great, thank you. Delegate Lawfer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Actually, you just answered some of what I was wondering is how are you going to be tracking this? So, and I'm just out of curiosity, sorry, Mr. Chair, how many duck blinds or, waterfowl blinds, every year are actually,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, approximately 4,000 east of Interstate 95. If you like, sometime I can stop by your office and give you a whole rundown of the duck blind laws and how they work. They're quite interesting, but the total is about 4,000, which is between Interstate 95 and the coast. Eastern Shore is exempt from them, so they all exist in that corridor.
thank you.
Okay. So subcommittee members, anybody else have any questions? What I'm going to suggest, because I am cognizant that we like to do as much of our work here in subcommittee, and I don't want to pass something out without having DWR really fully vetting through the ramifications, particularly if there might be an appropriations ramification. And so with the patron, would like to suggest that we go ahead and carry this over for the day and then just go ahead and pick it up really briefly at the next meeting. And that way we can make sure whatever, if we do act favorably on it, that it is ironclad and we don't have to relitigate this in full committee.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, that'd be perfectly fine.
Okay. All right. Do I have a motion? Second? All right. Been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor of passing by for the day, say aye. All those opposed? All right, thank you very much, Delegate Wiley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Askew. And the only way you're getting your bill out of here is if you show everybody your socks.
It was intentional if you look at the title of the bill.
All right, Delegate Askew, tell us about your House Bill 596.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the committee.
And yeah, you got to show us.
Show the socks. Got him. The camera got him. All right, back to business. Decorum. Mr. Chair, we have today in front of you HB 596. This bill establishes a new fund called the Fisheries Innovation for Sustainable Harvest Fund, Fish Fund, funded through easements associated with the transmission. I can't take credit for that. With the transmission of offshore renewable energy or gifts, grants, or general funds. So the focus of the Fish Fund is funding programs for infrastructure development, technological advancements, market and value chain developments, and capacity building for fishermen and communities. So as far as oversight goes, the VMRC, Commercial Fishing Advisory Board will manage the Fish Fund, ensuring industry-specific oversight. The fund also addresses the lack of targeted funding for economic development in Virginia's commercial fishing and seafood industry to enhance long-term viability, community well-being, and engagement. Mr. Chair, I also have the Commissioner of VMRC, Commissioner Green, here if we have any additional questions.
All right. Does anybody have any questions of the patron? All right. Maybe if we can get the Commissioner up here to say a few words, that would be great.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jamie Green, Commissioner of the VMRC. Thank you for your time. I'm willing to ask any questions or any comments that you need me to make today. The Fish Fund acronym took us a while to come up with, and we take a little bit of pride in it. It's kind of cheesy, but we enjoyed coming up with it. So thank you. So any questions you have for me?
Delegate Weber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So where's the money coming from?
So right now, the only thing that changes here is the VCIRC easements that would go to VCIRC for offshore wind would come to us for this. VCIRC's been kind of defunct. It hasn't operated in over 14 years. So other than that, it would be private donations and stuff into the fund. But it's just offshore wind, renewable energy easements.
Now, what would be a good, sorry, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Weber.
I apologize. So what would be a good example of what these funds would be used for?
So a good example you can use is if one fishery in particular is getting over-harvested or something is wrong, stock numbers are not doing well, and you can take a little bit of effort or pressure off of that with these funds and infuse it into another fishery, say one that's robust and is kind of getting out of control, i.e. like we hear blue cat or something like it is. Maybe you can infuse some resources in there to help offset the imbalance in the ecosystem and kind of reduce our environmental footprint. So it's kind of a level playing field when there's maybe a little bit too much pressure on one particular species, and kind of changing the focus and using the money to create markets, retail markets and stuff like that as well, to help get the value of it up as well for our Virginia seafood.
Delegate Weber, I can tell you want to ask another question, just looking at your face.
Sorry, Mr. Chair. So is this basically a continuation of like Hodges catfish bill?
No, I just used that for an example, but only for an example.
Really good bill, by the way.
That's just an example. It could be for when any species is getting a little bit under pressure, and one that may be exploding. Like say spiny dogfish, we don't process them in Virginia anymore, and the cost of shipping them up north is really ridiculous. I mean, it's the 40 cent in the transportation cost for that a pound, and they don't get but 20 cents a pound at the dock. So what this would do is help, hopefully, if something gets out of control, we can also maybe address processing in Virginia on that species as well, just to help take pressure off a fishery that may be a little bit stressed at the moment. Kind of balance the ecosystem so we don't get in a stressed fishery. Also infuse economic value.
Additional questions? I guess the question I have, so what in terms of the royalties, so the one fund that we'd be putting in here, so what is the level of funding that we're looking at?
Yeah, there has not been any easements for the wind energy at this point.
But you don't have a sense of what that might look like?
No, sir.
Okay. Delegate Krizik.
Thank you. Just following up on that, on line 120, you strike out Virginia Coastal Energy Research Consortium and you put the fish fund.
Yes,
Is that consortium active or going to be, no?
So the last report that we've gotten from that consortium was 2010. Before that's 2009. We could have used the information from the consortium when we did the wind energy project last year, but we had to pay for that ourselves because they didn't exist. Couldn't get the information.
Okay. All right. Any Delegate Laufer?
I'm still not clear who is receiving the money. Is it commercial fishermen?
So ma'am, Mr. Chair, if I may, so the fund would be created to infuse, it could go to commercial fishermen. It would be, there's 3 levels of checks and balances. We have a process now for one of our funds now that does this, very similar, and it comes in, the applications would come in to my office, and we would vet them through the commissioner's office, and we have a board that's called a Commercial Fishery Advisory Board. It's made up of 9 individuals that represent industry throughout the Commonwealth, and they would pick basically the order of what they would prioritize. Then it would leave there after vetting, make sure it was within policy and code with the AG's office and so forth, and it has to go before the commission to be voted on what projects. It could be anything from maybe a commercial fishing type of project, or even into a processing type project, or a retail market. It's an all of the above approach to help infuse resources in an area that we can maybe get Virginia seafood, that particular seafood up and running that's maybe struggling a little bit.
Right. And I guess Delegate Laufer, the bottom line is that VMRC would be responsible for making decisions and distributing the fund. They would have a relative amount of flexibility with respect to where the urgent needs are to direct those funds.
Yes, sir.
Okay. All right. And did we have any amendments or substitutes on this particular bill?
No, sir.
Okay. And then I guess, Mr. Clerk, have we received a letter that this needs to go to appropriations if we choose to pass it out of this body?
596. I have not received a letter.
Okay, so we have not received a letter yet. I'm looking at our Uber chair down there. about whether you want us to report and refer now or whether you just want to handle that in full. Okay. All right. Any further questions? All right. Is there anybody here who wants to speak in favor of the bill? Anybody who wishes to speak in opposition to the bill? All right. We are
Mr. Chairman,
back.
I have a motion.
Back to the committee. Delegate Krizik.
I would move to report and refer this to appropriations just because of the name, fish.
All right. That's been properly motioned and seconded. I'd be more impressed if it was mackerel or something like that, something really
Next year.
complicated and tough to
Next
do.
year.
All right. Been properly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All right. Clerk, open the roll. All right, Delegate Krizik, how do you vote? Aye. Votes aye?
It's a little fishy.
All right. All right, clerk, close the roll. That bill reports on an 8-0 basis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the
Thank you,
committee.
Delegate Askew. Is Delegate Cordoza here? All right, not seeing. Can we send out a call to Delegate Cordoza?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, he was just presenting in criminal sub.
Okay. If you can let him know, we'll do some bills, and when he shows up, we'll take him up.
Try to get the proposal.
Yeah. Okay, so that leaves, I think, 3 bills for members of the subcommittee. I am going to turn over my mighty gavel to Delegate Herring so that she can chair, and I will present my bills, and then we will have one last bill from Delegate Clark from the subcommittee. Madam Chair.
Yes, Delegate. Your bill, which one?
House Bill 71.
House Bill 71.
All right.
Proceed.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the subcommittee, so House Bill 71 extends by 1 year, so from July 2025 to July 2026, the time for the city of Alexandria, your city, Madam Chair, to complete its project to eliminate its combined sewer overflow. I know a lot of you all are familiar with what Richmond is doing. They're kind of in the hot seat now, but actually Alexandria's adventure in the hot seat actually started all the way back in 2017. So Alexandria has a very, very old system, several centuries old, with the combined sewer serving about 544 acres of Old Town. It's certainly a problem. Back in 2015, I think it was estimated that about 130 million gallons of combined sewer was discharged to the Potomac River. At the time, the city was undergoing a long-term control plan with EPA and DEQ, so they were compliant with federal law. However, that plan actually gave them several decades to solve the problem. Enter the General Assembly. So the General Assembly back in 2017 passed House Bill 2383, which required that cleanup to happen much faster. At the time, we knew that it was extraordinarily aggressive. These are massive engineering projects, but I think we all agreed that we wanted the problem cleaned up and wanted to apply that kind of pressure. So fast forward to today, the city has spent $365 million. It is on track to spend $615 million, and the project is now about 70% complete. And so made a huge amount of progress on a very complicated project. If you ever have a chance to look at the report on this, on Alexandria's efforts, it's really incredible. I encourage you to take a look. That said, a couple of things put the project behind schedule by a couple of months. So a little thing called the pandemic didn't help with supply chain issues. I think their driller came from Germany, and the delivery of that was impacted by the Ukraine war. And so actually it's amazing that they're still as on time as they are now. So given the good faith effort of the city, what this bill does is give them that extra year to make sure that they don't get into violation of the law. So I think in real testament to the city's efforts, so in addition to support from the State Water Commission, and I think DEQ has also weighed in, the folks who really pushed that legislation in the first place, so the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and River Keepers, have also signed letters encouraging us to pass the bill. So, Madam Chair, that is the legislation, and happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. If there are questions from the members of the committee. Yes.
Just real
Delegate.
quick. So essentially, like last year when we had part of the issue with the TMDLs for cattle and all that stuff, this is kind of the same front, but only with Alexandria. They had issues getting, like you say, getting the technology, so they just need an extra year to make sure that they're in compliance with the law.
Madam Chair, that would be correct. Yeah.
Perfect.
All right, thank you. Any other questions? Is there anybody here to testify in support of the bill? Thank you.
Madam Chair, Preston Bryant of McGuire Woods Consulting on behalf of Alex Renew, which is the Sanitation Authority. Just a point of clarification, it's the Sanitation Authority, separate from the city, that is responsible for, owns, operates, manages, and is handling the construction project. The Sanitation Authority, Alex Renew, and the city are very closely collaborating on this. Very great partners, but just wanted to make that clarification.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. We operate by motion.
Move to report.
It's been moved and properly seconded that the bill be reported. All members wishing to vote, please do so.
Aye.
The motion passes 8-0.
The bill passes 8-0.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Next, Madam Chair, I have House Bill 870.
Right, you may proceed.
All right. Madam Chair, following along that theme, House Bill 870 deals with a very fun issue of sewage sludge and biosolids. And I just like to say the word sewage sludge because it kind of rolls off the tongue.
Can you say it 3 times real quick?
Probably not, nope. But over the last couple decades, we have literally spent billions of dollars upgrading our wastewater treatment facilities to clean up our wastewater. And the thing is, the better job that we do of that, the more byproduct that we have in the form of biosolids and sewage sludge. And so that byproduct has to be stored somewhere, and then it's ultimately applied or otherwise used. Biosolids are actually valuable, and so my rural compatriots over here know that it's a great fertilizer or a soil amendment. However, this bill has nothing to do with the application of biosolids. It deals only with the storage requirements, regardless of what its ultimate use is going to be. So a little bit of background. So DEQ is the department that regulates the storage of biosolids. And those biosolids can't be land applied unless there are certain weather conditions are met. So if it's too wet or it's frozen out there, you can't apply biosolids on the ground because they're going to run right off. What this bill deals with is the fact that climate change is resulting in more rainy weather. And so, for instance, back in 2018 and 2019, Virginia experienced some very long and extreme wet weather conditions. And what this did is it actually created an issue at our municipal wastewater treatment facilities because they were starting to reach capacity on their storage. And so the question is what to do when storage capacity reaches its limits so that you can avoid a discharge to state waters, because that's ultimately what we want to go ahead and do. Right now, these situations can only be addressed through the variance process. And that can be slow, and it's on a case-by-case basis. And so that's kind of potential recipe for disaster if you're doing that on a case-by-case basis. So what this does is allow DEQ to build into the regulations an approved backup plan should storage capacity be expected to be exceeded. And so this is going to be different for each facility in terms of the capacity and the situation. But I'm kind of reminded that old adage, failure to plan is planning to fail. And HB 870 just simply makes sure that we're doing that planning up front and that we're not waiting for an emergency to operate by variance. Finally, DEQ will need to update its regulations in order to effectuate this change. And the bill ensures that the stakeholders will be involved through the creation of a technical advisory committee. So in addition to the Virginia Biosolids Council and the Virginia Association of Municipal Wastewater Agencies, also included will be representatives from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and also the James River Association. So with that, that is the bill. Not aware of any opposition, but happy to take any questions. And I know Kyle Shreve from the Biosolids Council is here also to answer any questions that the subcommittee might have.
All right, are there any questions from the subcommittee? Yes, Delegate Weaver.
All right, so as I understand Delegate Bulova's, or Chairman Bulova's exceptional explanation, this is a proactive effort in case we end up where we were a couple of years ago with wet weather where biosolids cannot be applied, correct?
Madam Chair, I would say to Delegate Weber, that's absolutely correct.
Further question, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Thank you. So were we able to make up some ground this last year with how dry it was? Or was it too dry to even apply?
Madam Chair, I would answer Delegate Weber. We were able to, we had a very dry year, so it was excellent for spreading and use. According to the permit, each site that you use biosolids as regulated through DEQ is permitted and must have a nutrient management plan. So yes, according to that, yes, sir, that's the way we had. However, we're expecting, many more prolonged, as the delegate mentioned, and we want to make sure we're prepared so we don't get into that crisis situation we were a few years ago.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. Any further questions? Right? Is there anyone who wishing to testify for or against this measure? Right?
Madam Chair, Virginia
Yes.
Biosolids Council supports it.
All right, thank you so much.
Assumed you knew that.
All right, and we operate by motion again.
Moved. Second.
It's been moved properly seconded that we report the bill. Please indicate your vote on the electronic voting machine. All right, clerk will close the roll. The bill reports at 7-0. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Delegate Lopez, Chairman Lopez.
So there was a small issue with Delegate Askew's bill regarding an amendment that needed to be addressed. May we bring that bill back up in order to address the amendment and put it in the proper
Mr.
posture?
Chair, having voted on the prevailing side, I wish that I move that we reconsider the vote.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, all those in favor of reconsidering the vote by which we pass that legislation, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, the bill is back before us. Delegate Askew.
Something's fishy.
Mr. Chair, I apologize, a freshman mistake, so I apologize, sir.
You're not really a freshman, man.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the substitute. I have to introduce substitute.
Okay, so you actually have a substitute.
Yes, we do have a substitute.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I move to adopt the substitute.
All right, is there a second? All right, all those in favor say aye. Oh, wait.
Amendments.
Oh, it's not a substitute. Okay, so if we got, all right, so belay that. So if we got line amendments, if our legal staff could please read the line amendments. Now,
So
let's
I
have them read
withdraw
them
my
first, I
motion.
think.
Mr. Chair, on line 4, introduced after title, we're striking the 28.2-1206. Line 12, after 28.2, 208.1, we're striking the same section. Line 33, introduced after the section number, we're again striking the same section, and we're inserting 28.2-1208. And on line 48, introduced, we're striking all of lines 48 through 95. So that's essentially 28.2-1206.
All right, and Delegate Askew, before we vote on those, can you give a brief explanation of what those line amendments do?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I believe when it was drafted, it was in the wrong code section, so it's correcting it's putting in the proper code section.
Okay. All right, anybody have any questions? All right, it's been properly moved and seconded for the line amendments. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. All right, we've got the amended bill before us. Delegate Krizik.
Mr. Chairman, reading this, does this now not need to go to appropriations?
Delegate Askew.
It's Mr. Chair, I believe it's up to you.
All right, I think let's have it stay on towards appropriations, and if we get to full, the full chair can go ahead and make that determination. Okay. Any other thoughts?
So move to report and refer as amended
Yes.
to appropriations.
Okay, is there a second? There's a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right, and you're in good shape, and if it doesn't have a letter by the time it gets up to full, then that can be amended by the full chair.
Mr. Chair, don't we need a recorded vote?
Oh, we do. I'm so sorry. Yes, let's take a recorded vote on that.
Thank you.
Delegate Griesick?
You guys are just doing this on purpose.
All right. And I think, all right, clerk will close the roll. That reports 8-0.
None.
So my understanding
Hernandez.
is that,
Who voted for is Hernandez? Oh, he is here.
oh, he is here. Okay. So point for the clerk, I think that the Uber chair can only vote if a member. Okay. Okay. All right, so clerk will close the roll, and that bill reports with amendments to appropriations 8-0.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and members of the committee, I apologize again. Thank you.
All right, perfect, thank you. All right, I think I saw Delegate Cordoza coming in. Delegate Cordoza, welcome. You have House Bill 1151. Please present your bill.
All right, 1151 will provide funding for flock cameras at the Dandy Point boat ramp, which is state property, state-owned property in Hampton. This measure is necessary because of a very high crime index that has been purported at that area. Not only some gang activity, but drugs, drunk drivers, and if you can see this picture from there, this is a truck that was hauling a boat going over 100 miles an hour in a residential neighborhood, who crashed, and the boat ended up knocking down power lines and in part of a tree. And the assailant, who was assumed to be drunk, got out of their car and walked to their home and was able to evade drunk driving charges. We really need these cameras. They're not very expensive, but we just need to get these cameras installed. The Department of Wildlife Resources has the ability. They just need to have the permission and the funding to do so.
All right. Thank you, Delegate Cordoza. Any members of the subcommittee have questions? Delegate Lawfer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering with the photo, sorry.
I'm so sorry. If I could move the substitute before I get started with that, that would probably make it make more sense.
All right. We have a substitute before us. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second? All right, properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, the substitute is before us. And I guess Delegate Cordoza, can you describe really briefly what your substitute does that's different than what was originally introduced?
So the original bill had the Department of Marine Resource Commission, which was not the correct overseer of that boat ramp. The correct overseer of that ramp is the Department of Wildlife Resources. And it changes it from that department to the correct department.
Okay. All right. Members have questions. Delegate Lawfer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In terms of the footage, I'm wondering, like, who's viewing it? How long are you keeping the footage? Like, who has access to it? And
So to answer the delegate's question, it would be the Department of Wildlife Resources officers, which are the game wardens. I know their name is newly changed, but conservation police. They are the conservation police. This bill also gives them the ability to use that for evidentiary purposes to help stop these crimes and go after the perpetrators. We've actually had one where Ring cameras were able to catch some of the activities, including gang members shooting into residents' houses for calling the police on them. But for some reason, the Ring cameras were not clear enough. They couldn't identify anybody. They couldn't charge anyone. And the location where we wanted to put these cameras would capture all of that. It would have the ability to read license plates, and it would be able to really stop crime in this area.
Delegate Lawfer, follow up?
Yes, and my other question was how long will the footage be kept? Just questions like that.
I'm not able to give you that exact time. Department of Wildlife Resources would have that, but I'm sure as a matter of procedure, it would be the standard amount that they can keep any of this type of footage. They have a couple of these cameras other places. I assume that the procedure would govern it generally.
Mr. Chairman.
Delegate Krizik.
I have a couple questions, 3 questions, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
The first question is, Delegate, so does the Department of Wildlife Resources right now have any other cameras? And if they do, what is their process for storage of the film and everything like that?
Thank you, Delegate, for the question. So from what I've gathered from speaking with them, they do have other cameras. They also have the means and capability of storing them. I don't know the exact way they do it, but they assured me that they are able to do this. They already have done this. They just need permission and funding to do one more.
Mr. Chairman.
2 more, I'm sorry, 2 more.
And Mr. Chairman, follow up. Do these cameras they have use this machine learning? Is this artificial intelligence?
I don't believe that they are. The flock cameras are. I couldn't exactly tell you, but I don't believe that they are.
Line 21 and 22. And then, Mr. Chairman, my follow-up, and you can, while you're looking at that, in the code under section 46.2-8821, there's already a definition of photo monitoring device. Why are you using a different definition here and not the one that's already in the code? Just curious.
I'm not sure if I'm not sure of the code difference. I put in 4 flock cameras specifically because of their license plate reading abilities. That could be the reason for the code to be specific that way versus a regular security camera. And that would be my best guess at why.
All right. For Delegate Lopez, Chairman Lopez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. A question for the delegate. Is he saying that we need to be using a specific company for these license plate readers, these LPRs? No? He just said flock. He wanted to use flock. It was not in the bill.
Yeah, I don't think it's in the bill that it is a specific company.
Yeah, I didn't. When I used that when getting the bill drafted as an example of the type, so of the ability, and of course they put in language. I don't believe they put in any language to a specific company. They just tailored to the language to the abilities that were needed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. So I have a question for the director, if that's okay. So the first question that I have, so does the department have, or have you implemented these at other parks or other properties that you all own or operate?
Mr. Chairman, and Ryan Brown, Director of the Department of Wildlife Resources, and I know the delegate's spoken with several different folks about the concern in this area. We do not today use these cameras in the department. That doesn't mean we couldn't do it. We've actually explored the concept, but as a department standing here today, we don't have an existing program.
So you don't have a program, and I guess the follow-up is there's no reason that you couldn't if you thought that it was necessary.
That's correct. No reason other than I don't know whether special authorization and legislation for this particular technology is necessary. We just learned at headquarters of the bill very recently, due to the original bill being with Marine Resources Commission, certainly have no hesitation whatsoever wanting to be of assistance in the area down there. If it's a high crime area and we've got an asset there as a boat ramp that we can help with that problem, absolutely, want to do so. And I feel like I've said this already at this podium today, just learning of it being our property involved in the bill, need to do some follow-up before I can tell you for sure what we would see as necessary besides funding to do it.
All right. Any other questions from the committee? Is there anybody in the audience? Delegate Cardoza.
And just to clarify, my notes were for the VMRC, so I could have been speaking to them, and they could have been the ones who said that they have already done this.
Okay. All right. Any members of the audience wishing to speak in favor of the bill? All right. Any members of the audience wish to speak in opposition to the bill? All right, hearing none, comes back to the subcommittee. I guess let me just throw out a thought, which is kind of two things. Number one, it sounds to me like you don't necessarily need authorizing legislation in the code. It's more of a resources issue. So I don't know if you have a budget amendment in, but that would probably be all you need. You probably don't need this actually in the code. You would just need the budget. And I guess the second thing is that I know that there has been a lot of discussion with respect to some of the issues raised earlier about what parameters do we put on photo monitoring devices, particularly things that engage machine learning in terms of how you can use it, how long you can keep that stuff on file. And so I think that's a bigger discussion than what we could probably deal with in a piecemeal basis right here. But anyways, any other comments from members of the subcommittee?
And I could speak to one reason why it may be necessary. Because it needs to be used for evidence, and I believe the bill does put a part where it can be used for evidence.
Okay. All right, Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just have a motion when necessary, when ready.
All right, now would be an appropriate time.
Motion to gently lay on the table.
Okay. Second. It's been properly moved and seconded. That's non-debatable.
Mr. Chairman, speaking to the motion.
Table is unfortunately non-debatable.
No. I'm not debating.
All right, and I believe that is clerk, open the roll. All right, Delegate Laufer, Delegate Krizek is an aye. Clerk, close the roll. That bill is gently laid on the table on an 8-0 basis, but your budget amendment is still alive.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, subcommittee, and thank you for your time.
All right. Last, certainly not least, is Delegate Clark, House Bill 406. Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
All right. Do we have a motion?
Second.
All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All is opposed. All right. We got the substitute before us. Delegate Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. HB 406, the substitute language would tax DEQ with making current reporting information from water intakes more readily available to the public. The reporting requirement for water intakes are much broader than permitting requirements, so the amount of data capture is vast. While DEQ currently does a great job in aggregating a portion of this information in their annual resources report, I believe it will be especially helpful to researchers who are studying the impacts of our aquatic flora and fauna from industrial water intakes. So this language would alleviate the need to FOIA DEQ for the water intake data, which can be both time-consuming and expensive, both for the individuals and the agency. There also is an accompanying budget amendments for $100,000, which provides some insurance if there is significant impact from making this data available in an online dashboard.
Okay. Are there any members who have questions? Is there, all right, you're getting off the hook easy, Delegate Clark. Delegate Weber.
Sorry, I'm trying to
Yep, take your time.
take it in. So, A, what is a cool water intake at a power plant? And which power plant are we talking about?
Delegate Clark?
Well, I don't.
Can you say the question one more time?
What is a cool water intake at power plants? Like, are there specific power plants that we are looking at?
No, so we're looking at, and I may need to phone a friend if they're.
I apologize.
Okay. Friend being phoned, if you could introduce yourself and what organization you're representing.
Good afternoon. I'm Nathan Thompson from the James River Association. So to speak to Delegate Webert's question, the substitute language brings in all of the surface and groundwater water intake data that's currently being reported to DEQ, not just specifically cool water intakes for power plants.
Delegate Weber.
Sorry. All right, so, Mr. Chair, what is the goal of legislation?
I would say to Delegate Weber that the goal of the legislation is to make it easier to access this information for the public and for researchers. Rather than having to go through the FOIA process, it would bring the information hopefully online in a dashboard format to alleviate the time and the burden and the economic costs of FOIA. Water intakes are a serious concern, especially for aquatic flora and fauna throughout the Commonwealth. So to get as much information into the hands of the public as possible is the goal of the legislation.
Two more questions, Mr.
Delegate
Chair.
Weber, yes.
All right, so can you give me a good example of a water intake that would show up on this database?
Yes, absolutely. This, pursuant to the code, captures just about every water intake that brings in about over 10,000 gallons per day in the Commonwealth. So if you're talking about, say, Advanced 6 down in Hopewell, that's one that would be captured under this.
Okay, and last question, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Weber.
All right, so then the goal is to have DEQ put this up on a website so that everybody can see it, correct? Rather than having to FOIA.
That's correct.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So in reading this, I do have a question, because I noticed, I don't think it was a substitute that you provided. I believe that these were amendments. So we'll need to, I don't know if we need to re-vote on that, probably. But before we do that, I am interested that it adds on to the existing language, which is just declaratory that we're going to enforce federal regulations that we're already required to enforce. And so I don't know that we typically will put into code that we're going to enforce what we're supposed to enforce. Can you kind of speak to kind of that part of the bill?
I can't speak to it too well, Mr. Chair. I would say that DEQ is already doing a fine job enforcing those regulations. So if that language were to make its way out of the bill, then I think that that would be just fine.
Okay. And then I guess my follow-up question then is for your subsection 2 and 3 then, is, I guess, it doesn't say anything about a dashboard, but I assume those parts of the regulations are for an existing dashboard and you're adding it to a dashboard? Can you help me understand where the dashboard fits in with the language that you have?
The dashboard language has not been added to the amendment language yet, to your point. So that's something that would need to be addressed, although I would note that there is a budget amendment that would help provide any funding if that was found to be something that was a more expensive item to produce.
Delegate Krizik.
So, Mr. Chairman, I would, as a member of the Appropriation Committee, I would say that this probably needs to be, if we do refer it or report it, it should be referred to Appropriations.
Well, and before we do that, I want to make sure we get the language right, because, you know, for the first part, I agree, we probably don't need that. For the other two parts, I think the dashboard is a great idea. I'm just not quite sure how that language effectuates that. Delegate Weber.
Mr. Chair, DEQ has a load of information that is available to the public. I guess my question would be, how do they, for the gentleman or DEQ, how do they usually make some of these reports available to the public?
Director Rolban.
I'll defer to Director Rolban.
Good afternoon, Chairman Bulova and fellow members of the committee. Right now, we provide an annual report that provides all this information in a summary method. I have not seen, except on my phone just now, this new language, but I appreciate, number one, I agree that, you know, we do follow federal law. Our permits are reviewed by EPA, so I'm not sure where that's coming from. We have no problem. I just learned about this from Nathan this morning, that they really want the water data. I've asked our staff to work on how we could do this, because the module that collects all this information, we have a new version starting April 1st. So we're going to look and see how we could do this to put it online. So we're more than willing to do that. As far as I know, no one's asked me for this information, or no one has asked DEQ since I've been here. It's 2 years, but we're more than willing to provide the information. So we, you know, right now it's a summarized data, so we could provide it in a manner that's, you know, so anyone could get down to the individual water withdrawal. But it's not just cooling water. This is anyone that withdraws water, period.
Okay. Delegate Weber.
Yes, Mr. Chair, a question for the
Delegate.
Director. So anyone that withdraws water, so that could be a well or with anybody with a withdrawal permit for agriculture?
10,000 gallons a day, exceeding that, correct.
Okay. I guess my inclination here is that I want to make sure that the language in the bill does what we intend, and then we'll need to send it to appropriations. And so I don't know if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to speak in favor or in opposition to the bill, but my gut is to have this pass by for the day so that we can get some solid language that I think all the stakeholders know it'll do what it's doing, and they can coordinate with Director Rolban so that it's clear what we're intending to do.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Vassy.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Brett Vassy, CEO, Virginia Manufacturers Association. Number one, we just saw the amendment. Now, we didn't intend on speaking to the original bill because it was just asking for implementation of what's coming. But I haven't seen a Section 1 bill turned into a regulation before. I'm not sure if that can actually be done, but this is a regulation now, and it does impact a large number of companies. And I do want to make you aware, you know, since 9/11, the universe for manufacturers has changed substantially. And it sounds easy to just put information like this out on a public website for anybody to see. But believe it or not, there are still folks that may not have good wishes for where they can find intakes for large factories, particularly those in the chemical industry, defense, homeland security products. So there are reasons that these have FOIA requirements, so the department can make good judgments about what is released and what isn't. But the information, we're not discounting the importance of filing the information. We do that through our permits gladly. But aggregating this is how we've been doing it, FOIA to protect. And we ask that you continue that practice.
Mr. Chairman, I have
Delegate Krizek.
If now is okay, can I introduce a motion?
Yep, I think now would be the appropriate time.
With all due respect to my seatmate to my right, and from what you've heard, I think this bill is not ready for prime time right now, and we could maybe pass it by for the year and come back next year, figure it out.
So I think that would be carry
over, that's
under
the word,
Rule
carry over.
22, if I understand. All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor, that's a voice vote? It's a voice vote. All right, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed. All right, that's continued to 2025. Oh my gosh. All right, I got one last thing. because I'm going to do an ask you, which is that I had one very technical, tiny amendment that I forgot to have come up on my great sewage sludge bill. It's on line 81. There needs to be a comma between administrative and staging. And so with great humility, I would really love it if somebody made a motion to bring this back before the subcommittee so we could make that amendment.
You did.
No, you did.
Mr. Chairman, having voted on the prevailing side, I would like to move that we bring back your wonderful sludge bill, HB, what was the number? 87.
I will second that motion because it's not fishy.
Oh, my God.
All right, it's been properly moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed. And I guess for our legal staff, our attorneys, do you know what the amendment is? Okay, so it is a comma, literally just a comma.
I move to adopt the amendment.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right. This is an Oxford comma, come on.
Mr. Chair, I move to report the bill as amended.
All right, so properly moved and seconded. Clerk, open the roll. Delegate Lawfer? All right, clerk, close the roll. That reports with amendments. He's an aye, yeah. That reports with amendment 8-0. Mr. Clerk, I believe that's all the business we have before us, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed. Thanks. Great work, everybody, today.